All right, it's simply
It's dark as dark magic is.
no. Again, and I don't mean to patronise or whatever, but dark matter is simply something they created to explain the fact that there has to be something there, but they can't find it. All right, what's there? What's actually there is this.
Yes, well.
All right. So beyond this point, yes, you have other realms. All right. Time is completely illusory. That's why I played a brief history of time, the piece I wrote at the beginning, and so on, without drawing your attention to it, and a poem about time as well. Time is entirely illusory. If you haven't noticed yourself, I mean, you had an illusory hour today, didn't you? Supposedly. But it is an illusion, and it's caused by inertia in 3 dimensions. That's all it is. If you didn't have time, you'd get bloody confused about what was going on. Everything slows down in 3 dimensions. All right? The way to tune it up to the universal level of frequency, and this is, you call it what you want, gnosis, transformation, you call it what you want. 5 kicks. So whenever you start a project with the initial thought, it will develop in a natural way. For example, I've not thought of this, but off the top of my head, I want to build a house. All right, let's say I want to build a house. There's the thought. I've had the thought. What's going to make that happen other than money? Forget that one. What's going to make it happen? Well, at some point, you see, I'm talking about the believing, obviously. At some point, I'm going to have to get off my arse and put a brick down, aren't I? I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have to go out and speak to the builder. I'm going to have to initiate. I'm going to have to go and put the finance in place. I'm going to have to do something. Right, so then I've done it. And phew. And what happens? Well, the builder comes along and he starts laying down and he starts evolving. And then something will go wrong. The builder will shut down because there's been a global economic collapse, whatever it might be. That's at that point you've got to step in again. You cannot let it detune beyond that point. I'm talking about love and relationships here as well, incidentally, if you haven't got this one. Everything, you cannot let it detune. It will naturally detune. So there's something you can do at the T point, just before it evolves and transits into the scale above, perhaps where love becomes transcendent in this example. How's it going to become transcendent? Because if you sit back and do nothing and put nothing into that relationship, it'll drop away, and then you'll have another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and you'll wonder why the bloody hell everybody leaves you, or whatever it is, or why you're leaving them. It's all the same. It will evolve through there. So you have the spirit world above. It's the gentleman over here. What are they? Where do you go when you're dead? Well, I wouldn't mind betting that it's something to do with that. I'm not even going to go there. I do have a firm idea and opinions on it and so on, but it's not really for this conversation. Yes, there are communications from there. Yes, all that's known exists at that level. You can consciously tap into what's been called over the centuries the university of thought. Every thought that every human ever had is accessible. When you meditate and tune up the frequency of your mind, and what's your mind? Well, science would tell you it's a Bose-Einstein condensate that comes out of the brain. It interacts with the fields around it. Probably quite right, because your brain is that connection. You have to take the action, and that's all I'm trying to get across to people today, because you've not achieved anything without ever taking the action, and yet we have a truth movement who sits back and seems to think that action means research. Yeah? I'm not saying you shouldn't research your points, so you can convince yourself that, yeah, this point is right, or that's right. But once you've got that, run it against the laws of nature and see if you're right or wrong. Because there's people out there coming up with all these wonderful concepts, and if they've missed this, don't even listen to them. Don't even listen to them, because they haven't got a clue. a couple of names do spring to mind, which is amazing because I'm so bad with names. In fact, it's gone again. David.
Not Wilcock.
Yeah, David Wilcock. He's out there talking. Yeah, I had a conversation with him by mail a few weeks ago because we were both being zapped to hell by somebody being attacked, cyber attacks, all sorts of things. So I've communicated a few times. He springs to mind because he's out there talking along a similar line about this in 2012 approaching, which we've not even touched on. I've got every respect for David. I've heard a lot of people attacking him, but he's actually talking an awful lot of sound sense, and provable too, because he's touched on this. He's not actually done the triple octave thing, not to my knowledge. He may have done.
He hasn't.
I'd be amazed because most people have missed it. It's too simple. I couldn't do a 3-hour talk on this. What's the point? There it is. Everything, passive, active and neutral, 7 notes each. Consciousness, life, physics, matter, light, call it what you will. So coming back to light, and the 144,000 followers of Jesus who will return with Jesus in the second coming. It's 144,001, isn't it? Now you'll see that alluded to throughout the Bible and many ancient writings. Well, why did they have this fascination with 144? What's it about? It's light. Speed of light, 300,000 kilometers a second. I'm not going to do a sum here. If you work that out, take anything travelling at 300,000 kilometers a second and send it around the surface of a sphere, yeah? Guess what? It does 144,000 arc seconds per second. Okay? It's light, but it's light in our solar system. It's the science, the physics, the chemistry, and everything. And this science does go beyond that. Merely quoting that number is simply an indication that the person understands what lies beneath it. They don't then go on and explain everything necessarily. Others do. You will find this, yeah.
I am familiar with there's a website called Code 144, where it's basically analysing current classroom and the mathematics used to levitate the blocks and the what we call hyperdimensional physics involved. It's called Code 144.
Right. I've seen this. People laugh at that. You know, how did they build the pyramids? All this sort of thing. Well, I've seen it done, mainly because I got off my arse and went and found the people who were doing it, but I've witnessed it. I can't convince you of that, but I'll tell you how they do it. I can't do it really, but it's going to be...
They'd be levitated, man.
Yeah, let's try this. I remember that, Mr. Idiot. So, just coming back to sound, what does that make you want to do, other than tell me to turn it off? What do you think? What's that doing? If I was to put, actually I can feel it on this stage. It won't work, it's not loud enough. If I was to put a piece of paper down there, what's it going to do? If I turn this up, what's it going to do? I can get this to the point where, and you can't with a piece of paper, because it will just, oops. See that? See what I nearly did there? It's sound. Resonance will lift things. Now the key to the pyramid thing, actually, is not that they came along with this great big piece of scientific equipment to do it. Yes, they did. They had an artifact, and you can read about it again. They even tell you what it was. You know, believe it or not, pretend it's myth if you want. They had an artifact, but the key was the mind. You see, back then, they knew all of this, and they literally lived their lives with this understanding. Nothing outside of this was real to them. Now this implies, sorry, I'm pointing at that, because everything is light, and light can be manipulated. If you understand its frequency and what to do with it and so on, it can be manipulated. Matter is light, stone block. 83-ton stone block is light. It's also made of crystal, incidentally, the pyramid stones, which actually helps to amplify the whole thing. So get it resonating, and you could then feasibly pick it up. But I tell you what, you're going to be hard pushed to lift it all the way up there. It goes up on its own. I've seen I think it was about half a ton block of stone lifted the height of a house. You know, it's not made up. There's these experiments, scientists are doing this all the time. You just don't read much about it because you're not meant to know this. It's not mainstream stuff, but it's out there for anyone who wants to see it. The link with the pyramid builders is the mind. They expected it. They had power. It was quite understandable to them to think, I'll levitate that as a group. And they probably did something like the Om, which I've seen druids do, and lift another druid. Yeah? Om? Anyone got that? The Om? Resonant vibration of voices. It would be fun to try it in here. Have you ever experienced, I'm not going to, but have you ever experienced it? Have you experienced the Om? Yeah? It's amazing. When you have a group of people do it, it's sort of quite, what's the word? Emotional.
Does it matter what key you use, what key you do it in?
No, you'll naturally find the key.
What's the right note?
There's no right thing. It depends what your target is. A stone will need a different frequency to resonate than a glass would or whatever. But I think, as I heard someone here say, you'll know the right note when you hit it. Yeah? Just like most things in life. Everything evolves in this way. So, okay, let's take active scientist. And they say, well, actually, yeah, and this is what they say. I see that. That's actually, hell, that means this is wrong. Well, that means that's wrong, but surely it can't be, can it? Yes, it can. Go off and win the Nobel Prize in Physics by reworking your equations around there. And when you come across the number 7, just realise that it is in fact 10. Alright, you can scale it up to 10. Do your math that way. You'd be amazed what comes out of it. And what's come out of it, for me, has been the sort of, it's quite satisfying when scientists come back to you and say, yeah, I see that. And not one ever has criticised it, ever. And some, I believe, are changing the world. Now, I have to emphasise, this ain't from me, this is there for anyone to go look at. Alright? So, when you do move into the realms of science, though, that's when you're dealing with numbers and equations. And this was the part where it sort of had me go down for a year or two, dealing with scientists, asking me questions that I couldn't really answer. Because all I knew was that it was there. I didn't have the math behind it, until I discovered that the greatest mathematical conundrum in history has actually long been known, and that is the prime number sequence. Heard of prime numbers, anyone? A prime number is one that's indivisible by anything else except itself, or 1. Therefore, a mathematician will tell you 1 is not a prime number. It is. It's only divisible by itself. It's a prime number. And that little deception was intentional. That was known long ago, but you read in a maths book today, they won't quote 1 as a prime number. And that is because, how do you put this one into words? They won't tell you that, and they need it out of the textbooks because a certain rule applies to prime numbers. They tell you that you can never predict the frequency at which prime numbers will crop up if you project into infinity. There's no way of predicting whether anything is a prime number or otherwise. What you have to do is take it and reverse calculate it and say, yeah, it is a prime number, or no, it's not. Well, if that's the case, how can someone like me and mathematicians out there say, sorry, but every prime number exists either side of every multiple of 6? Find an exception. Actually, let's see who's got a simple arithmetical head. I'm assuming you have, Dean. Can we go through prime numbers?
You can try.
Yeah, just start with 1.
I think with 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11,
Yeah.
13.
Okay, that'll do.
11 and 13.
Yeah.
Inside of 12. Okay.
1, 2, 3. Right? 2 is the only prime number that's actually even. All the others are not. What's going on there then? So, this does tie in with this. I don't mean to make this complicated. Remember, we've got 3 energies. 3 energies, active, passive and neutral. Each inwardly composed of 7 notes, which when in harmony create the 8th note, bringing it into physical reality, creating matter, energy, whatever it may be. 3. Every number is made up of 1, 2 and 3. There are no exceptions. That's the number system. And numbers are quantities. That's all we're talking about, is quantity of something. Plato believed numbers were real, that numbers, we live in a universe of numbers. That's what it is. I would agree, but it's a different thing. 1, 2 and 3. 3 is 1 plus 2. Blah, blah, blah. You can all do that little bit yourself. 5 is made out of 3 and 2. 136 is made out of, you can work it out. You get it. It's all 1, 2 and 3. You don't need any other numbers to make any other number. So those 1, 2 and 3 are very special numbers. No surprising then that they keep referring to the Trinity throughout history. All right? You have your, as you point out, pyramid, triangle, all sorts of things, but the Trinity. This is your Holy Trinity, for want of a better word. 1, 2 and 3. Now the next prime number was 5, 7, 11, 13, and you can go on to infinity with your prime numbers. I used to notice in a work environment, whenever you give a handout, people's consciousness just dives into it and they ignore what's being said and done. Try not to do that. I'll give you these. Could you pass them round? There's 12 there, and I have the 13th. Just make sure that everyone can sort of see one or have one on a table or whatever. Yeah. Now, interestingly, what was the name of the damn movie I watched? The Esoteric Agenda. I'm sure a lot of you will have seen that. I only saw that last week, and there's a guy in there. What's he called? His Universal Spiral, I think. Something like that. Yeah. He's come up, he's cracked the secret of nature, and he came up with this Universal Spiral. And I was sat watching it and thinking, yeah mate, you have. Because that maps perfectly. It's not the same thing. This maps perfectly over his Universal Spiral. He's given it different names and whatever. It's the same thing. There you have the prime number cross, alright? Now I can't show you this, but I'm going to tell you what I learned from theologians and what I learned from research and so on in esoteric law and the secret societies that I did get involved with. The Book of Numbers will tell you what to do. Certain parts of the Bible will tell you, if you want to decode this, do this. There's a classic line that says this, do it time and time and half a time again. We might just touch on what that part means, but it does basically tell you to take your numbers, alright, that's in the Book of Numbers, and to put them in a circle. Guess how many numbers have to be in the circle, of course? It's 24. We're not going to kick us out of the room, are we? No? Yeah. There's 24 numbers, and if you, and these are the notes, the individual notes, if you then put those in a circle, you'll see there, you can follow them round, it's on the inner ring there, or the middle ring, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 24. 24-hour clock is what you've got, okay? At 24, remember the octave, which is still 22, without the Pythagorean kicks, the octave spirals up. This is creation. This is physical matter, energy, spiraling away to infinity. It must, and it loops in cycles of 24, is what it's telling you. So if that were true, if you put it in a circle, it would then tell you or show something to you that's rather revealing. So you do that, and that's what I've got on that piece of paper for you. Don't get too confused with all the other numbers yet. Just notice that all the prime numbers lie on 8 rays. Anyone familiar with the New Age will know the term 8 rays. Anyone familiar with Buddhism will know the term the 8 rays of light. Okay? So if you actually had a pen in your hand and you wanted to draw those rays in, does anyone recognize the shape? That's the cross of the Knights Templar. Alright? And if that's a startling coincidence, so you then take the processional numbers, and some of you know about the procession of the equinoxes. Some of you maybe don't. So what it is the wobble of the planet. It's what defines our perspective of everything else that's out there. So you have to take account of that, and they have done for millennia. In fact, that's what your stone circles were. That's what the Druids set them up for. When the Earth wobbled to a certain point, they simply had to keep time against the background stars so they could track the passing of time. So they knew when the next time will begin, the next age of precession. This is all about precession. That is what happens in 2012. Alright? The end of a great age. Not the end of the universe or the end of life as we know it, but certainly an evolution in consciousness is taking place. As you can tell from the music, it's rather good. The music of the spheres. Mike, do I need to draw this to a close, or?
Maybe an idea.
It's 5:20.
Right, well I shall do this in 5 minutes then. Just a bit thrown off by the tones coming in there. Take the prime number cross. Can everyone see that? The 8 rays. All the prime numbers lie on the 8 rays. Can you see that without me detailing that any further? Yeah? Now the reason that they don't call 1 a prime number, and yet it is by very definition, is because when you discover that every prime number lies to either the left or the right, is 1 more or 1 less than every multiple of 6 to infinity, you'll find the only exceptions to that rule are squares of previous prime numbers. This actually is the nature and structure of all matter and all energy. That's how it evolves. On the other page, that is a physicist's handbook. Where do you think this came from? You know? And it proves time and time again. So, what you can then assume is that -1 is also a prime number because 0 is a multiple of 6, is it not? 0 times 6 is 0. Therefore, a prime number exists either side of 0. Give that to a mathematician and put that in your mathematical pipe and smoke it. And you know what happens? All these equations where they use prime numbers change slightly. Can't go into much more detail there because it gets a bit complex for this sort of talk, and for me. But there's the prime number cross. Yes, there's the cross of the Knights Templar, and that is actually formed around the processionary numbers of 11 and 19 and other numbers. I'm just giving you a hint of a path I could take you there. So, one almost final point, I think penultimate has to be the word. You know, we're talking on this one back here, we're talking about everything, whatever it is inwardly composed of many different forces, actually definable as octaves, inwardly composed of 7. That is pi. Alright? A prime number cross, which actually betrays the secrets of the prime numbers. All of three-dimensional reality is constructed around prime numbers, and that which goes beyond is based around the whole number series. Alright? Just a little clue for anyone who's researching numbers and theory. And if you ever want to discover the significance of a number in esoteric writing, reciprocate it. Divide it into 1. Do what it says in the Bible. Unity. Divide it into unity. Give you their number system that they employed. Pure Pythagorean maths, this is what Jesus taught. Now, people can say, you're wrong, prove it. I just bloody have. You can go and read it in the Bible now. Okay? What he was saying was this knowledge is known. It's been known right through the pharaohs and so on. And yes, he wasn't necessarily a good guy who wanted this for the benefit of the people. Who wanted it was Paul. That knowledge was stolen, put into the church and kept and condemned as a cult and devil-like ever since. Alright? And anyone who comes across it used to get burned. Thank God it's not quite the same nowadays. Although it is in many respects, because I will get burned for saying this. Trust me. Hopefully not too bad. Yes, coming back. There's an ancient knowledge. Now, if I've touched on it, I do not expect people to see it, and I don't claim to know it all. Alright? But it's there, and it's provable. And you can prove it in 7 different ways, and the Bible tells you how to do that as well. Bear in mind that the Bible isn't a Christian thing, it's pre-Christian. Yeah? All of these writings were stolen to create a religion. It's there, and it's known. 7 ways of proving anything. Open the 7 seals, and you will be able to see the 7 seals of knowledge as they are. The 7th seal is consciousness itself. You have to consciously grasp this. You have to do something based upon that knowledge. When you open that, it will cause a personal apocalypse. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I did it. I was on TV within 3 weeks. It's strange how things happen. Anyway, all of these forces underlying everything in nature in the same way. Whatever these forces are doing and however they're interacting, yeah, their net result is what you see. Yeah. So this pen, it's not going to do it, is it? That pen is stood there because the force of gravity is working that way, other forces of air pressure is working that way, lots of other forces, scalar forces as physics would explain to you, all coming in all different angles, but the net effect is that pen stays there. Alright? Even though underlying that position are many different forces interacting. So science sees that pen there and it defines rather neatly that that pen is there. Look at the vector. It's an inch from that side of the table, it's 3/4 of an inch from that side. That's its position in space. And yet, underlying it are all the resonances that make the matter, all the things that are influencing, all the sound waves that are bouncing off it. It's a bit heavy to move. All of these things have a net result, and it's that net result that you see. All of these forces I refer to as scalar forces because there is, how do you put this one? We live in a 4-dimensional universe. Literally, time is not a dimension. Ignore it for all practical purposes. Time actually cycles according to the phi ratio. Things will repeat in your life based upon a certain mathematical calculation. It's not your actions that repeat, it's the circumstances that will permit those actions to happen again. You can see this and actually track it. And I think Greg Braden has touched on this, if anyone's interested in that particular author. You'll find that things repeat through history according to the phi ratio, and they repeat in your own personal history too.
Not the guy that talked about the thing. Okay.
I'm not sure. So, I'll come back to that. All these forces interacting, giving one net result. That pen was there. It stays there. All those forces underneath are called scalar, and there could be billions of them. It's just you're taking no account of them. Maxwell, in his equations of electricity, did and defined those forces. That's been cut out of his equations nowadays because the true laws of electricity, as originally defined, prove what I've been talking about. The best diagram one can make of all forces summing to zero, that's what's used in science. That's what was used in ancient science too. All forces in 4 different directions summing to zero in the middle. That's the pen on the table. That's gravity, that's air pressure, that's what you name it, they're the other forces. That is the simplest diagram one can draw, and they do in physics, of forces summing to zero. Where have you seen that? Don't even need to patronise it, that one. In 1927, as a result of centuries of secret societies researching the things I've touched upon here, because they know that there was a secret to be had, and they've researched and researched. One of those secret societies was the Invisible College. It's now the Royal Institution, the head of science around this planet, and many other examples like that exist. They sought this thing. They sought the truths of magnetism, electricity, you name it. That's what the secret societies generally did. Others looked to interfere in politics and manipulate that, and so on. In 1927, they found it. This is bringing you up to date. This is your reality now. In 1927, it was found. This science was sus, and guess who sussed it? Yeah. And it went underground, and it went to Argentina, provably so, and it's surfaced in scientific experiments ever since. Now, I mentioned David Icke's book before. I believe, from a summary I read, he's going to suggest that actually all of this alien intervention, whatever, throughout history has come from the moon. I say, of course it has. It is no coincidence that the moon is there. The guy on this program I'm telling you about the other night said, I said it myself in what I've written, it's the greatest coincidence in history.
Except David Hugo Boyle was talking on the edge, and he said that the moon's an asteroid, and it came into our solar system about 12,000 years ago.
Yeah, crap. Provably crap. So I don't know if you're out there, whoever said that, I'll show him why. I suspect David will show him why in his book. Provable crap. What isn't provable crap? Alright, is the fact that the moon is hollow. Does anyone know that? Do you want to laugh at that?
They fired the sound at it, haven't they? It resonated.
Every scientific experiment in full public view proves that the moon is hollow. They just simply say, well, actually it shows that it is, but it can't be, can it? Well, it is. It's also, for the first time in the history of this solar system, in exactly the right place, at exactly the right time, for us to see a total eclipse of the sun. What a coincidence, as the guy on the program the other night said. What a coincidence, but by God. Yeah, you can't, there's no other planets out there that can have this. Actually there are. Because if you put a moon in that position around the planet and tilt the planet by the exact amount that this planet's being tilted, guess what resonance it sets up? Go look at 2732. It's what underlies everything. It sets up a resonance which actually triggers the evolution of conscious life forms. Without that resonance, conscious life forms cannot exist. Alright? Far out thing to say. Were that the case, the moon would have to be put in exactly that position. It's actually drifting away at the minute, a few inches a year. I thought gravity brought things closer. Doesn't matter. Tidal forces, they call it. The moon is hollow, and science tells you that. You don't really need to look much beyond that. I'm sure a lot of you are probably not aware of what's actually been discovered on the moon by the NASA whistleblowers. 15-kilometre high glass domes, proof and evidence of ancient civilization right across the moon, across Mars, other planets in the solar system. This solar system has a history that is different from the one you've been taught. Now I can assure you that it's known by them at the top. And the question is, are they interacting with these, are they extraterrestrial? Who knows? But are they here today and are they interacting? Well, if you go and look, it's pretty damn obvious that something along those lines is going on. I don't intend to get into that. I have my own clear ideas on it. I've been told what's actually happening. It doesn't mean I accept it or believe it. But what isn't happening, and I can assure you of this, what isn't happening is everything that you're being told. If you follow me. the moon didn't end up there, why it didn't come in as an asteroid. It's impossible under all laws of physics, including the ones that are not talked about, for anything to be captured of that size by the Earth. Absolute impossibility. So he'd have had to come up with a fix in his equations. And that's how I can prove him wrong. I've spent years doing this with scientists who say, this is true. I say, well, it can't be because. No, who are you? Who are you to tell me that? Well, I'm not. There's the information. Thank you very much. I've done my job. And they come back and say, help! Yeah, I see it now. That was wrong. This is right. And it is right. And no doubt, if this goes out on the internet, I will be swamped with people saying that's wrong. Bring it on. If you're a scientist out there with an open mind, bring it on. If you've got a closed mind, don't waste my time. I'm not here to tell anybody anything, but I can show you some things that are there and are actually facts. That's all. I've gone beyond the facts and suggested that there are other levels of beings in communicating with us. That's not necessarily fact. I don't know that, but that's what I would surmise from it, and that's certainly what the ancients knew. And here is the key to what they knew and what this means. Thank you. These spirit realms do exist. In this universe, there are entities. These are energies, okay? You could become satanic tomorrow. You could go through experiences that are just... and suddenly you've lost your marbles. You could do really, really evil things, tapping into this consciousness that allows people to do those things. It exists. It has a personality. Just like the consciousness that some refer to as light has a personality. These consciousnesses, is that plural? Have existed for a long, well, eternity. And anyone who meditates or prays or whatever can link into these. Okay, this is what you're doing. And over time, so there is a Christ spirit, if you want to call it that. There's an energy that one can tap into that will do that. Which is why you will have people coming back over the years, usually on repeating cycles, who are that awake and aware, and who will change the world. Equally, you'll have the others, the dark ones. This planet is run at the minute by the dark ones, for want of a better word. They're influenced, in contact with these darker forces, whether they're extraterrestrial, whether they're part of the universal consciousness. Who truly knows? But they do exist, and they're as real as the car you're going to get in or the train you're going to get on and go home. So when a Christian talks to me about Satan, where do you think their minds are? What do you think they're actually linked into? To want to kill me for saying Jesus is not what you think he is. Jesus was not the Son of God, any more than I am the Son of God, and Alan's the Son of God, and you're the daughter of God. If there's a God, we all are. The universe is a conscious creation, literally. Everything at this level is reflected above. And if you want to look at the chromosome spirals and everything that make up DNA, then get the Deep Space Telescope and look out there. I can tell you now, you'll see exactly the same formations, in exactly the same ratios, in exactly the same proportions. Okay? You're part of a greater being, a conscious, I was going to say living, I don't know what that means, a conscious being. That is the great secret of thousands of years. Okay? And that destroys just about every religion, and yet it overlaps them. But they want to manipulate you, because you can access all of this as an individual. Unfortunately, a lot of those who have accessed this over the years have then taken the power that it can bring them and used it against you. Now in 1927, as I say, that was backed up when the Nazis themselves discovered the technology, the scale of physics, and converted this stuff into technology itself. You now, in this current day, have HAARP, which is the ultimate resonance weapon. And the only real problem with HAARP, other than all the stuff it can do, is that being a scalar weapon, the bigger the target, the more effective it is. Now, you set off a scalar weapon and use it, one thing is guaranteed, it's a consequence of doing it, it will affect the sun. Big time. It will actually destroy it if you target the sun. These are the forces at work in the universe, and they have been tamed. If tamed is the word, they will turn around and bite if they're not used properly. And you're told it's all global warming, eh? I don't think I have much more to say. Not yet, anyway. Any questions at all?
You mentioned the also. Is there an organised group?
Yes.
I would imagine they're organised. I imagine they're controlled.
Do they sit around a table as a group of 13 and plan things? Yes, they do. Who they are doesn't matter though. It's what they are that you really need to worry about.
I had 5 things written down which I sort of was going to create questions with, but you've almost touched on them all now anyway. Their laws that they have to abide by when they take advantage of these things. I was going to ask you if they have a specific law that they have to abide by, if you know about it. You've slightly touched on crystals, game theory, which you've touched on, which they sort of know what we're going to do before we do. And anyone who watches Lost might have noticed the Jacob character touches people and the opposite character speaks to people. Obviously one's the touch and one's the sound. And the iron, does it have any relevance to X? The figure X or not?
No, not. Well, if it does, it's not what I found relevant. You did remind me of something I just meant to say earlier and didn't actually point out, and that was to do with the numbers 1, 2 and 3 and the uniqueness of the number 6 and why it keeps coming into everything. 6 is completely unique. Every number is made up of 1, 2 and 3. You can prove that to yourselves in your own time. 6 is therefore unique because 6 is not only 1 plus 2 plus 3, it's also 1 times 2 times 3. It's the only number that is both the sum and the product of the 3 constructing numbers. Okay? And that should give you an insight into your 666 and so on. I can assure you it's not the number of a man. And if you think, I count his letters, he's the Antichrist. How many times have we heard that? Actually, it did incite me to want to know what mine is. Yeah, calculated, it says. For he who has eyes to see and ears to hear, whatever it is, calculate the number of a man. It's the number of 666. It doesn't say it's the number of the devil. It says 144,001, blah blah blah. You can multiply the numbers on the prime number thing there to find the speed of light on the first scale. I do not expect anyone to understand the prime number thing yet. I'm sure some minds in this room will take it. Don't look for anything complex at all. I could talk for hours on the prime number cross and how it actually unifies chemistry, physics, mathematics, and answers every unknown question within those sciences. But as you can imagine, that would need preparation. 6. 1 plus 2 plus 3, 1 times 2 times 3 is giving you the key actually to the prime number thing. Because 6 is also the number around which all prime numbers sit in twins. Jesus had a twin, it tells you. I shall leave it at that. That really is it. I didn't need to...
finite in extent, but without boundary. It could be like the surface of the Earth, which is limited in area, but it doesn't have any boundaries or edges. There wouldn't have been any moment of creation, just as the surface of the Earth has no beginning or end. Instead, the state of the early universe would have been determined by the laws of science. However, the sonographological implications of my proposal were not apparent to me or anyone else at the time of the Vatican meeting. Maybe that was just as well. In imaginary time, there need not be any singularities which form a beginning or end to time.